Words can't express what an honor it is for me to speak to you today and introduce our future President of the United States, Dr. Ron Paul. Ron Paul
delighted to see you here. I understand there's an election coming up. How are we going to do in Colorado? Great. Let me introduce my wife, Carol, down here. And a granddaughter, Linda. Carol and I will have a celebration tomorrow. We'll have been married 55 years as of tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming out. This is our third stop today, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of optimism, but also a lot of concern. We have a lot of concern about this country, but we also know that if we do the right things, we can get out of this mess rather quickly. I've been saying that we got into this mess because, we overspent and overborrowed and overprinted money and overregulated. And I can't understand how those in charge in these last 4 years thought that the solution would be to spend more, tax more, regulate more, and print more money. It doesn't seem to be working. So the alternative is to go in a different direction. For the last 100 years or so, our country has gotten very careless about the rule of law. To me, the rule of law is obeying the Constitution. An old-fashioned idea, but one worth reviving. So if we got into trouble by avoiding the Constitution, I think that if we all of a sudden went back to the Constitution, it would take us about a year to recover. Instead, it's dragging out. It's into the fourth year now, and there's no reason to think that next year is going to be any better than this year unless we change our ways. That means we have to change the role of government. We don't have to believe that the government should spend the money. The people should be spending the money, not the government. But also, I believe our country in the last 100 years has lost confidence in the cause of liberty. We became, content to, enjoy the fruits of freedom, and freedom does produce a lot of wealth. But then we got into the business of just forcibly redistributing wealth and forcibly, getting advantages from the government, forgetting about where production comes from, where wealth comes from. And now, what have we done in the last 30 or 40 years since there's been nothing sound about our currency? What we have done is we have consumed our wealth and we have bankrupted our country, and we cannot sustain it. We have to change our ways. My suggestion for changing our ways immediately, I think in the first year we could cut the budget by $1 trillion. And I've argued the case that the easiest place in the world to cut the spending, because there are so many special interests involved, but we can develop priorities. And I think the top priority for cutting is the money we waste overseas. We've had essentially perpetual war going on for many, many years, and unfortunately, the executive branch have made all the decisions. They don't come to the Congress, they don't come to the people. Sometimes they go, as a real insult, they go to the United Nations to get permission. That is no good. So once again, what is the solution? Follow the Constitution. You can't go to war unless there's a declaration. And we do. That is the responsibility of the federal government to have a strong national defense. And if we have an enemy that's attacking us, yes, declare war, go fight it, win it, and get it over with. But it is a great consumer of wealth, and right now that is what we have to do. We have to do the cutting, which means the war should end. We should start bringing our troops home from around the world. And we can lure literally save hundreds of billions of dollars, and guess what? You don't have to sacrifice any defense. The way we spend money overseas, bombing and attacking and invading and occupying, we make enemies. What we don't need are more enemies. What we need is more defense. And that means not just pumping money into the military-industrial complex, but pumping money into the defense of this country. I've been very pleased. One of the things that I've been most pleased about during the campaign, and this happened even 4 years ago, is the tremendous support we get from the military as well as the veterans. If you look at the donations to our campaign, we get twice as much as all the other candidates put together from active military duties. So they know what's going on. They've been over there. I talked to so many young men, women who have come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they are not excited about going back for a fourth or a fifth or a sixth tour duty. They know what's going on, and we ought to listen to the veterans because they know that this is a futile exercise, and it's such a payment, not only in life and limb, but in cost. In the last 10 years, we've added over $4 trillion to our national debt to pursue these wars that we can't afford and aren't doing us any good. So this is a very good place to start, and we should be able to bring a lot of people together, left or right or moderates, bring people together and say, if you have to spend the money, spend it at home, not overseas. But also, under conditions of war, people are conditioned, if this has been traditional as far back as World War I, it seems like people are too willing to give up their liberties in a time of war. But we also have to remember that all of us who serve, whether it's the military or in Washington, we take an oath of office to defend against all enemies, domestic, foreign and domestic, and so we have to watch who's going to attack our liberties here at home just as well. And that is what's been happening here, the undermining of our personal liberties. I am convinced, as I bet most of you are, that you don't have to and shouldn't sacrifice any liberties for the so-called safety that the government is supposed to provide for us. We do not have to sacrifice our liberties. This is the reason I was a strong opponent to the Patriot Act. If I have anything to say about it, I'd repeal the Patriot Act. Sometimes things in Washington get passed because of the name, but almost inevitably, if you look at the name of a bill, just say in your mind, well, it's going to do exactly the opposite. They play tricks on us that way. So it wasn't very patriotic to vote for the Patriot Act. And if it had been called repeal of the Fourth Amendment Act, nobody would have voted against it, and that's what it did. But it's been systematic. That's not the only thing. I mean, we gave up a lot with the Patriot Act, and it's continuous. Searches without warrant. Nothing is safe. Privacy endless. I think symbolically, one of the worst things about doing searches without proper warrant and proper permission is what's happening at our airports. You know, the TSA is not making us safer. It's an abuse, and we shouldn't put up with it. You know, I generally will be quite willing to blame the leadership of both political parties because they have been derelict. Our party, the Republican Party, didn't do a very good job in balancing the budget. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around. But this administration has done some things that are very annoying. They certainly haven't done anything to revive the economy. But a couple of things that are very annoying to me is the attack on civil liberties. And, of course, he was the individual that would protect civil liberties and bring troops home and whatnot. But what he announced 1 year ago was very annoying. It should have been a warning to us. 1 year ago, he had a representative testify before a Senate committee that said it was now the official policy of the United States government that it could assassinate American citizens without charges and without a trial. And to prove his point, he assassinated 3 American citizens. This should not go unnoticed. And of course they say, well, these are bad people. The thing of it is, they weren't all bad people. We don't know. They were suspects. We're not supposed to be assassinated because we're suspect. And now what they're saying, if you're even associated with an organization that is suspect, you can be hauled in. You know, whether it's a website, an organization, a donation, or whatever. You know, the old-fashioned way of being a suspect and proven to be guilty in the court of law is still pretty important, and we need to be able to keep hold of that. The National Defense Authorization Act has not helped it. It further has undermined our liberty. Now it's on the books. It's been codified, even though some of these abuses have been going on. At least they had the common sense to know they were illegal and didn't tell us about it. But it's getting that they're so bold, and they put it into the law, and the law now says that the military can arrest any American citizen, no charges made, and held indefinitely, no trial, and they don't even get an attorney and put off their secret prison. That is not the kind of America that we want to live in, and we have to deal with that. There was one provision in that bill that went to this extent, and fortunately it was caught before it was passed. It said that if an American citizen had been arrested and he was a suspect, a participant in whatever, and he was tried and found innocent, the government could still hold him indefinitely, and the trial meant nothing. I mean, that is it. But there was a certain senator from Kentucky that got that part of the bill removed. But economically, we can't get back on our feet again if we don't get the money returned to the people, which means that we have to greatly reduce the spending and greatly reduce the taxes. We have to defend it from a moral viewpoint. If you have the moral right to your life and the moral right to your liberty, why don't we have the moral right to keep the fruits of our labors? Of course, it's very seductive. Direct taxation is a vicious burden on all of us, but that isn't all. They can borrow money and pass the debt on to another generation, but they also can just print up the money and dilute the money we have, and the people who try to work and save, they get robbed as well. When that happens, countries have done this notoriously many, many times, and every time they do it, they wipe out the middle class. And just look around. What do you think's happened to the middle class in the last 4 years? The prosperity has gone down, the wealth has gone down, the middle class has shrunk, and guess what? There's a characteristic of what happens under these conditions, and the wealth is transferred. It's transferred to a privileged class. And the privileged class are those who benefit from the inflation, those who have influence on Washington, and that's why the lobbyists and the money is so much in control today, and the people have lost control. That is why we need to follow through with this intellectual political revolution that is absolutely necessary. It cannot... How did you know that was my next topic? That's what I want to talk about. The Fed will be it'll self-destruct in the near future. But the one thing that everybody ought to agree, a lot of people don't go to the extent of ending the Fed. It sounds like a few of you here would end the Fed like I would. But probably 85% of the American people say, audit the Fed and find out what they've been up to for all these years. You know, during the bailout, in these last several years, the Congress created about $1 trillion of bailout money, and they bailed out companies and banks and who knows what. But at least it was on the surface, and at least it was appropriated money. The Fed was involved with $15 trillion of churning credit, bailing out banks, foreign governments, foreign banks, and they're still in the business of it. Bernanke's been to Europe and already guaranteed that he will be available if the banks get into trouble, and the banks have bought sovereign debt that's not worth anything like Greek debt. At the same time, our banks are intertwined with the foreign banks, and they've been involved with the derivatives movement, and therefore they say it's necessary. They say if we don't keep bailing them out, there's going to be a depression. But have you ever wondered, maybe they deserve the depression. You don't deserve the depression. a reassurance that freedom really not only is popular, freedom really works. And it brings people together. That's why I think that freedom is so necessary. Because freedom and liberty emphasizes the individual. It comes to us as individuals, not because we belong to a group. This is why I do not like to use hyphenated rights. You know, everybody has equal rights, equal access to courts, not because we belong to a group or what we practice or do at all. It's because we're individuals, and everybody should be treated equally. And But if people understand that, literally we bring people together. First off, there are some people who understand the economic liberties and we have a right to spend our money. So people who want their freedom to spend their money, they're not always the ones that want to protect your right to run your own social life as you choose. So if you bring people together because they want social, religious liberty as well as economic liberty, it should bring everybody together. Not because everybody would use their liberty in the same manner, but we recognize that in religion, people can practice any religion they want as long as they don't hurt people. So when it comes to social issues and religious issues, intellectual issues, it should bring us together. We should all come together to defend liberty, and then we get the chance to use liberty as we so choose. A lot of people are worried about that because some in Washington believe that you won't take care of yourselves and that the government will have to take care of you. But look at what's happening today. The government's been taking care of a lot of people for a long time. They wanted free education, free medical care, free housing, free food, and now we're broke. So I think the door is wide open for assuming responsibility for ourselves if we just get our freedoms back again. One of the reasons why a lot of people reject the notion of having enough freedom to run your life as you choose, because somebody might do things that are offensive. But if somebody practices a religion or doesn't practice religion, we don't say you shouldn't have the freedom to do that. So what you need to do, if people use their freedom in a certain way, you have to be tolerant enough, and you have to say, well, we're not sanctioning what it is. We don't endorse what they do, and that's entirely different. That is the only way freedom will work. And without that tolerance and this understanding, it will fail. Now, the one thing that is pretty neat about the concept of liberty is I'm convinced personally, if I had a choice, between liberty and wealth, I would want my liberty. I just think that would be it. But unfortunately, our society has concentrated on the wealth and forgot about the liberty. Now we're losing both. But if you defend liberty, it's automatic that you'll have the richest country in the world, the biggest middle class, and the best distribution. Changes in a free society changes always can come. We can change our Constitution in a deliberate fashion. We shouldn't ignore it. But we should change other people and raise our children and get along with people through persuasion and setting examples. Once we resort to force, then we're in big trouble. And this is what we do individually. People are forcing people how they're supposed to run their lives, how they're supposed to spend their money, and we tell other countries how they're supposed to run their countries. Even when they mess up, we don't have the right to go into those countries and occupy their countries and say, you're going to do this, this, and this. Those who want to go about the world in a military sense and force our way on others say that we should do it because we're an exceptional nation, American exceptionalism. And there is a bit of American exceptionalism. We have been a great country. We had a great constitution, and there are a lot of very good values in America. But once you use force to force it on other countries, you lose it all. You're no longer exceptional. So we have to We have to do our job here to set an example, have a free and prosperous society, and then maybe people would want to emulate us. They're less likely to want to emulate us if we forcing ourselves on other people and too much forcing the world on individuals in the economy and around the world. And if we accept that, believe me, we could arrive at a much more peaceful and a much more prosperous society. John Adams says that be careful, we are giving you a republic, but if you're careful, it will be morphed into becoming a pure democracy where the majority dictates to the minority and they can take away your rights. I think we've morphed into a democracy now. We don't have a true republic. But he said if you do that, you'll know it when it comes, because then the society becomes very wasteful. It exhausts itself. He says eventually your society will murder itself. And he used that word, murder. And I keep thinking of what we're doing to our own civil liberties. Yes, we have a lot of fears and concerns, and there are some people who would want to do us harm, but we're doing more harm to ourselves. We're destroying our money. We're destroying our liberties. We're undermining our freedoms here at home. And we're murdering the middle class. So we don't have to do that. We don't have to invent anything new. We had a great example. It was wonderful, and we enjoyed it. But now we have to redefine the role of government. The government should not be there to run the welfare state nor to police the world. Our government should be there in a very limited fashion to defend our liberties. I have a personal belief that a goal in life ought to be for us to seek virtue and excellence. And I'm also convinced in a state-run situation or big government tyranny, you don't have much chance to do anything. So if that is the goal, it can best be achieved in a free society. But when government assumes this role that they're going to make us virtuous and work for excellence, believe me, they destroy the fabric of the society, and I'm afraid that's what we have seen now. We were warned at the time of the founding of our country that if we're not a virtuous people and we do not, live up to these principles, that we will lose it. The Constitution is good, but it isn't the Constitution that holds us together. It's the people's attitude and their willingness to assume responsibility of what a free society is all about. The good news... The very good news is that there is a revolution going on. It's an intellectual revolution. There's a political revolution. It has engaged many, many young people. It's spreading through the college campuses. It's spreading around the country because so many who have been disenfranchised in the past all of a sudden knows that there are people now talking about liberty and not talking about politics as usual. That is very encouraging. So I think there's every reason for us to be optimistic, but we have to be political activists, because if we say, yes, I agree with that, that's fine, but in Colorado right now, coming up shortly, there's going to be some voting going on. Now, if you believe in this and you think this message should be heard, let's send a message from Colorado that we believe in liberty, and that's what we want. Thank you very much.